Our own planet is only a tiny part of the vast cosmic tapestry, a starry fabric of worlds yet untold.
Courage, a history of non-belief. A production of the Mid-Ohio Valley Atheist and Humanist. Democritus was born in Thrace, the northeast of Greece, and 229 miles from the intellectual epicenter of Athens, and about 460 before the Common Era, or 9541 of the Human Era. Science, the systemic practice using observation and experiment to understand the world, is as important to non-belief, atheism, and humanism as our ethical considerations. One without the other is empty and purposeless. 2,300 years before humanity split the atom, Democritus held insights on ethics and science thousands of years ahead of their time, firmly establishing his status as a forerunner of non-belief. Without the aid of anything approaching modern scientific instruments or institutions, Democritus is one of the parents of atomic theory. He theorized that the entire universe was made of atoms, which he taught were the smallest indivisible bits of matter. He proposed that the universe formed from a diffuse cloud of atoms that slowly coalesced into larger and larger clumps of stuff through mutual attraction. Democritus held that the shape and weight of an atom determined its properties and the substance it would form, and that atoms are in constant motion. Democritus and his intellectual heir Lucretius argued the atomic theory of matter by observing how matter could decay or be worn away over time, while matter could accrete and new plants and animals be grown and born. This process spoke to matter being built of smaller, indestructible units that could be pulled apart and reformed over and over. Democritus had important things to say about knowledge itself, hinting at what we would one day call the scientific method. For him, there were two types of knowledge. First, there was secret knowledge, and while it was an important part of us, it wasn't to be fully trusted. Secret knowledge came to us through our senses, and Democritus pointed out how very flawed our own perceptions are and how subjective even the best of our observations have to be. The other type of knowledge he called the legitimate knowledge. Legitimate knowledge comes from using your intellect to combine the subjective data from your senses with our knowledge of how such senses are faulty, how causality works, and with logical reasoning, you could come to know the truth of how things work and happen. He was just steps away from discovering modern scientific method itself. Democritus provided some clear political and ethical principles that are clear implications of a proto-scientific point of view. For Democritus, the freedom of life choices was more important than physical comfort, declaring that it is better to be poverty-stricken in a true democracy than wealthy in a totalitarian regime, as the latter was just a comfortable form of slavery. Democritus, in fact, stood against the idea that money was indicative of a person's success or value. He explicitly says that it is the obligation of those in power not simply to think of the poor, but to favor them, to provide them with aid and thus create social concord. Finally, Democritus believed that humans are not naturally good or ethical, but that we can, through purposeful choices, practice, and good discipline, become our better ethical selves. He claims that envy and anger are the roots of evil and self-destruction, while the path to happiness lay in moderation and setting one's sights upon what is possible and not on achieving the fantastic or impossible. Some celebrate Democritus as a father of science, but the vast majority of his works were destroyed and lost, largely due to the actions of early Christians. Though even Plato, who advocated a horrific totalitarian regime in his Republic, hated Democritus and wanted all of his works burned. For all of his work lost to time and ignorance, his uncanny insight into scientific theory millennia ahead of its time, his focus on method over belief, and his commitment to the ethical use of political power mark him as one of our own, a forerunner of non-belief.